Hello and welcome to episode 45 of Gar Borras' Time Machine. Gar, today we're recording the special huge episode number 45, as I said, and this episode is going to be on the classic TV sitcom Family Ties from the 1980s. Let's get right into it, Gar. Were you a huge Family Ties fan? And if so, how did you first become a fan?
Well, I wouldn't necessarily say zero in on that particular show.
Yeah.
But it was that was one of those shows that really kind of stood out.
Sure.
During the 80s. I think the reason why it was a brand new formula.
Yeah.
That they, decided, because in real life, everybody, especially when you were my age group, where you were growing up in the 60s and the 70s, and now you're in your early adulthood. Sure. In the 80s, and you're just kind of you're watching these different shows and stuff like that, and their idea for this was something that was kind of brand new, because everybody at home was used to it was always the kids having more of the the learning about life and doing all of the things, and having an open mind, and all of that kind of stuff. And the parents, in the family unit at that time, the parents were always the domineering, conservative.
Sure.
In raising the kids, and that was classic. Throughout all of the families in America. Sure. And their decision to do this show, that really made it different, was they flipped
the script.
Yeah. And now they didn't make all the kids, but the one that wound up emerging as the star of the show, was the opposite of that, very conservative, and with super hippie
parents,
flower child parents, and it was just a very that was the thing about the show that was the hook. Uh-huh. It was the flipping of those characters and looking at it in that way, which also fed the writers, because now the writers just have all this fertile ground to write all these storylines around. So it was a very unique
show
combination in the storyline behind the entire thing.
Yeah, and just so people kind of have an idea of what we're talking about here, Family Ties is an American TV sitcom, Gar, starring Michael J. Fox, which premiered on NBC on September 22nd, 1982 to May 14th, 1989. And Gar, that means this year the show celebrates its 41st anniversary. I mean, I can't believe it's been that many years since the show premiered. But let's look at a few things there. Michael J. Fox. I was reading that, of course, that he added the J to his name for the simple fact that he thought it would give his stage name more of a pizzazz, and because of that, people always kind of have remembered the name Michael J. Fox, because it really, I guess, sets him apart from all the other celebrities named Michael.
It sure did, and when I was looking at the same thing, he didn't like the sound of Michael A. Fox.
Yeah.
That is the actual initial for his middle name was A, and he didn't like the sound of that, and so that's why he replaced the A with the J. And in reality, I mean, when you look at it in hindsight, it was right.
Yeah,
he was right. It does have a better ring to it.
Yeah, and Family Ties was created by TV writer and producer Gary David Goldberg, who also created the TV series Spin City, which was from 1996 to 2002. And of course, that's another TV sitcom that starred Michael J. Fox several years later. And that has an interesting connection because in an episode of Spin City, it is revealed, I guess, because he's the mayor, in Spin City, his character, and on that show they revealed that years later that Alex P. Keaton was like gone on to become a junior Ohio congressman. So it's funny that this guy would refer to like his previous sitcom Family Ties in a later sitcom. But I thought that's cool that they did that.
Well, they from doing the research and everything, there was a number of references to Family Ties in that show. Yeah. So it was more than just like one reference.
Yeah. And
so it was kind of an endearing thing.
Yeah.
About doing that. Because it just kind of gave extra laughs.
Yeah, and again, Family Ties centers around the Keaton family. Parents Steve and Elise Keaton, two former hippies from the 60s, raising their three children. Alex P. Keaton, again, the P kind of makes him stand out. Mallory and Jennifer. And again, Alex becomes the centerpiece. And what's interesting about this is I was reading that originally the guy they wanted to play the part of Alex, if you can believe this, is Matthew Broderick, which is kind of interesting because he was kind of also an upcoming actor from Canada. He wasn't as well known as he is today, but that's the guy they originally wanted to do the part. And again, if you look at him and Michael J. Fox, I don't know if it's just the fact that he's the guy that we know as Alex P. Keaton, so that's who I kind of think of. But I don't know if I could ever see Matthew Broderick as Alex Keaton. What do you think?
Well, it's all speculation.
Yeah.
Because it's they had such a long, successful run, 7 seasons.
Yeah.
So people like you and myself, we're used to Michael J. Fox playing the part.
Yeah.
And it's really hard to mentally visualize
anybody else
like that.
Yeah.
Another person playing the part. But I feel kind of the same way that you do, that I just don't think that the show would have been as successful if with Matthew Broderick.
Yeah.
I don't have anything, to hang my hat on.
No.
That proves that point. It's just a gut thing and everything, and there, I very well could be wrong.
Yeah, we'll never know. That's the thing. And Michael J. Fox, let's be honest, was the breakout star of the show. What I mean is, like you said, typically when they have a sitcom, it's usually based whoever the actors are, usually the shows are usually based around the parents. I think, I don't know if that was necessarily what was originally planned or not, because it said that when Michael J. Fox originally auditioned, a couple things happened. He ended up getting having to audition twice. The first audition, the creator and the people at the network didn't really like him. They felt that his portrayal of the character was too kind of sarcastic. But then, and then also the head of the network, Brandon Tartikoff, who has since passed away, he did not think that Michael J. Fox had the. He said, "I just can't never envision seeing that kid's face, on the front of a lunchbox." And interestingly enough, what the article I was reading said that he was proven wrong, because eventually they did have a Family Ties lunchbox. So it's kind of funny. Things that people, predictions people make, and how wrong they sometimes are.
Well, those people behind the big oak desk, that are supposed to know everything. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And that's one of those running things that we always kind of resurfaces, you know, in doing the Time Machine,
sure.
is always winding up discussing about these people that are not part of the creative process. You know, they're businessmen, and their expertise is in business, which has absolutely nothing to do with the creative process. And yet they seem to think that they're tapped into it somehow, where they can make, you know, these decisions, and they're valid decisions, you know, in the creative world. And you know, it's really a big struggle that, you know, even, you know, continues today, you know, between the creative forces and the businessmen forces. You know, it's really always a clash between the two.
Yeah, and which,
you know, just like the writers' strike right now. That is the businessmen. Found a way to not pay them and be able to pocket that money. And now the writers want to renegotiate, because, you know, that is a huge part of their income that has been diverted, and so now they're on strike. So it's the creatives fighting against the business.
And another
the penny counters.
You know
what I mean? You know, and it's, I don't think that struggle will ever go away.
And you know, Gar, another aspect of that is, I was reading after, you know, like many TV shows back in the day, and even still today, Family Ties was filmed before a live studio audience, which was a major thing, and that's part of the audience falling in love with both Michael J. Fox, you know, and Alex P. Keaton, because, which basically are one and the same, as we know, but they were saying that, you know, after filming the first show, the way the audience responded to him and all his lines, like when he was on the stage, I guess he just had mastered that character. Even just in the first episode, that people in the audience were laughing every time he would say a line, and that was when the show's creator went to the network brass and told him, okay, you didn't think, you know, you weren't too impressed with this kid, but look, you thought he'd only maybe be able to deliver one funny line. In tonight's episode, he delivered at least 5 or 6 funny lines. The audience loved him, and it's another case of the audience kind of really being the ones that have a clue, you know.
Well, yeah, and you know, that you just hit on it, because when I was looking into this, their plans were. It truly was the main characters were going to be the parents, and they were not focused on the children as being main characters. And because of what you're saying is true, they kept track of, you know, that, and the numbers don't lie, which created a rediversion of the focus onto him now becoming the main focus, the main star of the show. And that's an organic thing, and that's one of those things that the penny counters will never ever be able to grasp.
And very very much like we talked in a past episode, we did our episode on Happy Days, how Fonzie was like the breakout star of that show. I mean, originally it was to be centered around you know, Ron Howard coming off of Andy Griffith's show, and it was the first kind of thing he'd starred in since then, you know, as an actor, as an adult actor, and they were supposed to have the character Fonzie come on for like 1 or 2 episodes, and the way the you know, fans reacted, I mean, all of a sudden they wanted to rebrand it, you know, Fonzie's Happy Days, and they didn't end up going with that, but they were even thinking of having a spin-off show, you know, kind of taking it to the extreme, if you will, but Fonzie was the breakout star of that, and there's so many times that happens, and it's amazing, you know.
Well, and that's exactly how Michael J. Fox got catapulted.
And in fact, you know, not just the first episode, but it's that with each episode they would do, the audience would just crack up anytime he come on, and that's okay. He's our star, and so again, this it said the eldest of the Keaton children is Alex P. Keaton, who is ambitious, overachieving, young Republican whose beliefs and politics often clash with those of his hippie parents, Stephen and Elise Keaton. Alex also has a huge love and desire for money. And again, this is kind of who this kid is. And as you were saying it in the beginning of today's episode, the fact that his politics and his beliefs so clash with his hippie parents, I mean, that is basically sets it up for each episode storyline,
Yes, it's fertile ground. For writers, they salivate for that.
Yeah.
It's when you have a blank canvas that is open to so many different, you as a writer, you can be like extremely creative. Yeah. And the more creative you can be as a writer, the better product that you can put out. It's the openness to creativity that allows, for the artists to be able to really create. Yeah. And that's where masterpieces come from. That's where hugely successful TV shows come from, and that's where all of this stuff, it all comes from the writing. Yeah. It really does. Everybody thinks that the actor is the person that thinks of those lines, and they just pop those lines up when you're watching that TV show. No, it's the writers that are actually writing those funny lines. When you talk to that person in real life, they're not as funny as they are on their show. Well,
it's two things, Gar. I agree. Number one, it is the writing, but number two, which is also a very important part, is the way the actors in the show portray those lines. And again, as we're talking,
it's a combination of the two.
And like having Michael J. Fox in the role of Alex P. Keaton, it just so worked because of the way he portrayed that character. I mean, I dare say that maybe if it had a different actor, it would have been just as funny. But maybe not, because maybe a different actor would deliver the lines differently. You just never know. And the thing with Alex Keaton is he is portrayed through the entire series of a show as an overachiever. He's smarter than everybody else, and he's not ashamed to let everybody else know it.
Well, and Michael J. Fox says that one of his biggest influences for that character was his brother.
Yeah. I was reading that, and again, we got to remember this was when this premiered in 1982, the early 80s. Ronald Reagan was in the White House. There wasn't such a political divide as there is now. That's the other thing. It's amazing over the last 42 years since this show first premiered, 41, excuse me, that the show itself has held up so well. Now, I dare say maybe if this show had been premiering, kind of in modern times, I don't know that, because it was saying this show is loved both by liberals and Republicans. I don't know that would be the case if it was premiering now, because of how divided the world is. But
also, which is also why, reboots or when they bring a show back, and, hoping to be able to capitalize on the popularity it had way back then, thinking that it's going to transfer now, and most of those do not.
They fail.
Transfer, and it really does have a lot to do with that show being aired
when it was
at that particular time to that audience during that time where the social attitudes were the way that they were at that time. And so now you take it and you try to recapture that success, 20 years later or 15 or 10 years later, it's a different time. The social norms have changed. The social attitudes have changed. A lot of the dynamics have completely changed. And which in turn, those reboots do not, turn out. It's very rare that a reboot even comes close to the kind of success. It's like if you tried to do a reboot of Married with Children. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
If you tried to do a reboot of that, I don't think that it would be as successful as it was when it came out in the late 80s and the early 90s.
I mean, again, and the world's so different, but, a great recent example of that is, after years of being off air, they brought Roseanne back, and then after only a couple episodes, she says something controversial that isn't too... thought too highly of, and they go and kill the Roseanne character off, and they're like, well, we don't want to fire the rest of the cast, so we want to carry on with the show, but we can't call her Roseanne because we've killed Roseanne off, so we're going to say that Roseanne died of a drug overdose and kill her off, that way she can never come back, and we're going to change the name to the Connors, and it's still on the air, but they're not as heavily promoting it. I don't think it's as popular as when Roseanne first came back. So again, that's just one recent example of what you're saying.
Yeah, it's just, it's trying to recapture that lightning in a bottle, and it's, you can only do it once.
Yeah, and Gar, part of the reason that the character of Alex Keaton works so well is because while, he's a young Republican and he's an overachiever, and he's his politics and his beliefs clash with that of his hippie parents. Underneath it all, everybody agrees that he's really a good guy. In fact, even though he has, he doesn't agree politically with his mother and father, in a lot of episodes, especially with with his father Stephen, you can tell that he really loves his dad, in spite of their differences, and he's like, my dad, he's a good guy, and they have these heartfelt father and son moments, and so that's part of a reason that character works so well, because underneath all his so-called beliefs, he's really a good guy.
And that's the life Michael J. Fox gave to that character. But there's also another thing about that show during that time.
Sure.
Justine Bateman, at that time when that show was in its huge popularity, nobody knew who her brother was.
Jason Bateman, yeah.
Yeah, nobody knew who he was. She was extremely popular at that time, and she was the most popular of the two
at the time.
The brother and sister. Yeah. And now, you fast forward to now, and now Jason is, he's one of my, I really, it's rare that he does a character that I don't like it.
Yeah.
And that I'm disappointed with what he did with that character.
Yeah.
It's very rare. He does a great job with all of these characters, and he has become super, super successful now. But back then, nobody even knew who he was, and it was all about Justine Bateman. Yeah. She was a huge star at that time.
Oh, you're so right. And, part of the reason he's so much more famous than her these days is from what I understand, is... while Family Ties was still on, she had wanted to leave the show to go on to college, but the show would not let her out of her contract at the time, which she was really kind of bitter about. And so eventually she did go to college after the show came off the air, and she got a degree, and I guess she kind of she's been to some things since, but she hasn't done as much acting since.
Yeah, I think I think it was more like computer science.
Yeah, that's what
in the technology area, and tying technology to making TV shows and movies.
Yeah,
that's what she basically, and and when when the information I was checking out, she was saying that either she was going to wind up working for a company heading up a division doing that, or she was going to wind up starting her own company and heading something like that. So she had, who knows, what has really transpired from all of that. But she had some big, very lofty goals with what she wanted to do with that education.
Had a backup plan, which is always nice. And to really kind of to get into some of the episodes now, Gar. That really stood out to me. That really kind of highlighted who this guy Alex P. Keaton was. There was one episode where I think you'll be surprised to hear of it. Alex got arrested. Still like a high school student at the time, and he got arrested because he at a protest speaking out on behalf of the ERA, the Equal Rights Amendment. Now, right there off the back, it seems like, okay, Alex Keaton, be a young Republican, he's speaking out on behalf of ERA. It doesn't seem to really fit. Now, as you can imagine, the reason he was doing all this was to impress some girl, and and there's a scene where mom and dad come to visit him in jail, and he's kind of getting all this attention from the girl and all the other women that are in jail with him, and he comes and he's like, talking all this stuff, in favor of the ERA, and the mom and dad just can't believe, okay, Alex, we're here to arrest you, no, take you home and bail you out, and he's like, no, I'm not gonna go. I'm gonna stay here with my fellow sisters. And then the girl that he's trying to impress, she's giving him hugs and everything and hanging all over him. He's just feeling on top of the world. And then by the end of the episode, he's got to come clean to because the people of the ERA also they want to have a ceremony in his honor and all this. And so by the end of the episode, he's got to come clean to the girl that, hey, all this ERA stuff, I don't really believe it. I was just trying to impress you. And of course, she gets mad. She breaks up with him, and that's the moral and the lesson we're supposed to, learn by the end of the episode. But it was also funny that, like, when the girls come to the house early in the episode, he introduces them to the girl to his family, and then he's waiting for the girl. And he's wearing an apron, and the dad comes in. He's like, "Oh, son, nice apron." He goes, "Oh, Dad, I hope you don't mind. I was borrowing yours because mine was dirty." "Oh, not at all, son." So again, just kind of how they did that, it was magic, I thought.
You can't have great performances like that without good writing.
Yeah, you're so right.
Good acting.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what everybody brought to the table. It was a very, very talented ensemble cast. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it says, and then getting a little more into Mallory Keaton, it says Mallory Keaton, played by Justine Bateman, who you mentioned, is the middle child, the eldest of the Keaton daughters. Mallory is fashion conscious, boy crazy, loves to gossip and talk on the phone. Oftentimes Mallory doesn't have a clue. She doesn't do good at school, gets poor grades, often feels inferior to older brother Alex, who often tells her that she is. So that's who Mallory Keaton is, and it's kind of interesting if you look at kind of a progression of Mallory Keaton. When the show started, she wasn't really portrayed as being so dumb, but as the show progressed, they really kind of made her seem like a real kind of simpleton,
Well, it's their view of comedy.
Yeah.
I'd like to think that writing has become more sophisticated because those type of characters, women look at those type of characters the same way that black actors and actresses look at characters when they're all their characters are illiterate slave people that are very very uneducated and all that kind of stuff. And that for many years for black actors and actresses, that was the only characters that were available to them. If they wanted to act and if they wanted to do their craft, they had to accept those type of roles because that was all that was available. And same thing actresses, they had to go through very similar parallels.
Yeah.
Of having women. It's like, when we were talking the other day on the Rewind, the reason why that was given that a woman back in the 60s, 50s, 60s, and the 70s could not have a credit card was because it was deemed that they were not responsible enough to handle the responsibility of a credit card. Now think about that. Think about that. Basically, in the 50s and the 60s and the 70s, what society was telling women is you are the equivalent of a child. And can you imagine how that would make you feel if you were a woman and you were being treated like that all your life? That you are nothing more than a child, and that is the only responsibilities that you will be given because that is how women were treated in society at that time.
Oh, sure.
And that's exactly how they portrayed Mallory's character.
And now for the third child, Jennifer Keaton, played by Tina Yothers, is somewhat of a tomboy. Loves sports, often watches sports on TV with her dad, Steven. Jennifer oftentimes seems to have more in common with older brother Alex. And in a lot of episodes, Alex will often say something to the effect that, Jennifer, you and me have a lot more in common than Mallory. You and me are more alike. We do good at school, and we're good at sports, and we're good at playing games and all this. And so that's who kind of Jennifer Keaton is. And then Stephen Keaton, again, talking about the dad. Stephen Keaton married his wife Elise in 1964. Elise is a modern woman who has a job as an independent architect. And Stephen works at WKS, a local PBS TV station, as a station manager. In many of the episodes, son Alex tells his dad he should stop working at a non-profit station and go to work at a for-profit station. Again, kind of where the two kind of belief system kind of collide, and clash. But it's a very interesting thing, how that it's coming up in many of the episodes.
So, that was the dynamic. And Tina Yothers, when the show ended and she wound up going into music, it's almost like she became the antithesis of the character that she was playing on that show. And she went from that blonde and everything to like
punked out brunette,
black, or blue black, hair, and went into this like more of a rock, kind of a metal
vibe
type of a look and everything like that. She just really completely changed, and it was trippy because at the time I'd say I'd say about 89. About 1989, I was working at a mom and pop music store in Walnut, California.
Okay.
And it was a small music store, and they made most of their money through lessons and stuff like that. But Tina Yothers, her brother, used to come in, and I would talk to him. His name is Corey.
Wow.
And I would talk to him, and he would talk about the band, that he was doing with his sister, Tina, and everything like that. So it's just kind of a tie-in to that, where degrees by separation kind of thing.
And it's an interesting tie-in because Gar, you make a very good point in the sense that I can't help but think that was one of your favorite words, her form of rebellion, in that everybody when they see me, they want to talk about me being on Family Ties. Well, Family Ties has been long off the air, and this is who I am now. Jennifer Keaton was a sweet little kid that loved to play sports. That's not me. I am all blacked out now.
Man, it's just like, wow.
Yeah.
It was almost shocking how to me, it almost, I just got the impression that she just rejected everything about that character.
The night and days, you say. And the Keaton family lives in Columbus, Ohio. Much of Family Ties humor was based on the cultural divide during the 1980s, when the younger generation rejected the counterculture of the 1960s and embraced the materialism and conservatism which comes to define the 1980s, which is Alex P. Keaton in a nutshell.
Yep. Yeah. Another thing that I found out, in looking into this is the two parents, the two actor and actress that play the parents, they share the exact same birthday.
Interesting. Wow. Amazing.
Isn't that trippy?
Yeah, that is.
Both of them have the exact same birthday, and they are exactly the same age.
Yeah, and then I was reading that the show's creator, Gary David Goldberg, before Family Ties, one of the things he was known for was as a writer on the 1970s Bob Newhart show. So again, a lot of these guys, they work on other TV shows, and then they want to try to have a creation, a show of their own, and that's how a lot of these guys get into TV.
Yeah, and for this show, they had quite a lot of notable guest stars.
Yeah, one
on the show. People that went at the time when they did these appearances on the show. They were relatively unknown. But River Phoenix. Almost every character of the four boys that was on Stand By Me, that movie. I just love that movie.
Yeah.
But three of the four boys that were the main characters in Stand By Me did guest appearances on this show. And the most notable one was River Phoenix.
Yeah.
But then, you also have David Faustino,
from Married,
who was the younger brother on Married with Children.
Yeah, Bud. Yeah.
Gina Davis, who went on to becoming an Academy Award-winning actress. Gina Davis, she was a character on there. Crispin Glover, who I personally feel you rarely see him, but every time you see him, it is just it's really hard to describe. He is an extremely talented actor.
Yeah.
Every character he does is completely different from any other character. You cannot associate any character he does with another character that he's done in the past.
Yeah.
They are all stand on their own, and they are all individual. So Crispin Glover was on that. I cannot say enough about him as a talent. Yeah. Christina Applegate also was on there. Julia Louise-Dreyfus
before Seinfeld,
was a guest appearance on the show. Just so many, notable actors, were guests on this show way before they ever became famous.
And a real big one that I really remember his performance from the 2 episodes he did was Tom Hanks. He played the Uncle Ned, who was he appeared in 2 episodes. In one of the episodes, you find out that Uncle Ned was a successful businessman, and he gets in a conflict at work. He steals like a chip that has all this money, and he gets in a disagreement and takes it, and so he goes off to jail. In another episode, he comes back, and his life is shambles. He's lost his job. He's become an alcoholic, and so again, the show kind of shows some of these darker characters. They had the episode with Tom Hanks' character, who was Uncle Ned, the mom's younger brother, Ned, and it was one of those times when the show kind of, they used to do these episodes, like they called them like special announce, like we're going to talk about alcohol, we're going to have an episode on drug addiction or something, and it was really Tom Hanks' like standout performance, and again, like you said, when he appeared on Family Ties, it was before anybody even knew who he was.
Yes,
Yeah.
and what's his name? Ed O'Neill.
Yeah.
The main character on Married with
Sure.
Children
Yeah.
actually auditioned for Stephen Keaton's role, the father role on there, and he actually, Ed O'Neill actually was right for the
part.
the part.
Yeah.
But it's just trippy to think, of other people playing these roles, because everybody that they wound up going with just seems so perfect for the role, and it's hard to imagine someone else playing that part.
Sure. And I was reading that after Family Ties was off the air, Gar, the New York Times wrote an article saying Michael J. Fox as Alex P. Keaton was greeted with the face of an angel, which is why the audience just loved him.
Oh yeah? Yes.
Yeah. And
Courtney Cox.
Yeah.
Was on there, and everybody knows her. God, you can't get more famous than that.
Yeah.
It's just so many notable actors and actresses are tied into that show. It's really impressive.
Yeah, and Gar, to just kind of have a little fun with today's episode, I'm going to post this on our Facebook page next week, and when I post this episode we're doing right now, but I urge people to go to also www.funnyatrivia.com. What you'll find here is they got these fun little quizzes that you can do on various like TV shows, and so I thought this would be fun to kind of do. Let's see how much of this you know. Do you know, Gar, how old was Alex when he lost his virginity?
Oh God, I have no idea.
Now this is a fun one. He was 17, and the reason I remember the episodes, one of the very first episodes, and Alex is still in high school, and he gets like an after-school job delivering groceries to the store. I know a lot of times, like in different states, they still have. I mean, it's more common now, since COVID. But even local grocery store, you can have your stuff delivered. But anyways, he gets a job delivering groceries, and he takes his sister Jennifer with him because she's just so cute. And if he has her along, he can get more tips. And then he meets this beautiful, like, older woman. She's she's definitely like in college, and he falls in love with her and. Not falls in love, but he just goes head over. I mean, you can imagine a young high school kid fall for an older woman.
Crush.
Crush. And she invites him. They go on a date. She invites him back into his apartment, and he's kind of like loving it at first, but then, so by the end of the episode, he's all in love with this woman, and because he thinks they went to bed, and that means you're in love. And then by the end of the episode, he reveals to his dad that hey, this woman, we did this, Dad, and how could she? He finds out she's got a boyfriend and she's not interested in him, but in the same way. And he's like, Dad, how could she? We do that in her bed, and then she tells me she's not, she's not interested that way in me. It was just a friend thing or whatever, And so that's why that episode is so memorable, because I remember picturing myself at the time. Oh man, I could just imagine if that was me meeting a woman that age, how cool that would be. So you kind of put yourself.
Well, I think all young boys at that age wind up having a crush on a beautiful older woman.
Yeah,
you know what I mean? So I think it is a part of being a young boy.
Yeah.
Especially at 17. I think at 17, that's probably when I lost my virginity.
Yeah. So there you go. And
it just seems to be the
norm,
the ripe time
age. Yeah.
Where I think most people do wind up losing their virginity around 17.
Yeah.
So it's but TV shows back in those days, that seemed to be the purpose of TV shows. I get that impression.
To teach a lesson, like a moral.
Yes, life lessons, especially for the younger that are younger children that haven't experienced life or are starting to experience some of these life experiences for the first time,
or at least having these thoughts
to kind of help people to make the right decisions, help young people understand that there are dangers to this, or there are consequences to that.
Yeah, I mean,
it just seems that all TV shows back in the 80s, that was the running thing. They were all full of life lessons.
Yeah, I mean, even if you go back to like the Brady Bunch, I mean, somebody in the family would have a problem by the end of a 30-minute episode. Problem solved, lesson learned. I mean, I remember in one episode where Robert Reed tells one of the boys, like, well, Greg Brady, he's like, well, son, just remember, son, a good man never goes to bed angry. Just simple things like that. And there's even another episode I remember in Family Ties where they had an episode talking about birth control, and Mallory was trying to decide first of all, should she or should she not have sex with the guy that wants to have sex with her, and if she does, should she take birth control? And then that was the whole episode, and then of course mom and dad have different views on that, and the mom's like telling dad, well, don't really want her having sex, but if she does, she's maybe
she's got to be careful.
Yeah, and so they put that out there, and again. Talking a little bit about this fun trivia, and you'll know this if you watch the show regularly. Gar, do you know whose photo is on Alex's bedside table in his room?
Oh gosh, man.
And this is kind of.
I've got a feeling I'm gonna flunk.
Yeah. Okay, I'll tell you. Richard Nixon, which again, all through the episodes, he's talking about being a younger. He talked about being a young Republican, and again, you'd think he'd be in a young boy's. Room, and he'd have posters of his favorite rock stars, favorite bands, maybe Farrah Fawcett or something like that. This guy's got a picture of Richard Nixon. It's because all through every episode he's talking about, he's always talking about Nixon and Reagan and being a young Republican. So that does make sense. Do you know, Gar, who was a lovable but childish next door neighbor?
Oh God, I forgot his name. Skippy.
Skippy, that's it. Skippy. Skippy was his.
That's it. Yeah.
Skippy was his nickname, and we also think of Skippy Peanut Butter, but Skippy was his nickname, and his real name was Irwin. I don't really know which is worse, the real name, Irwin or Skippy.
I'm just happy because I got one right.
Yeah. And then this is a fun one too. And I remember this was a real funny episode. Mallory has a boyfriend named Nick. Anyways, the first time we meet Nick, while Nick was eating dinner with the Keatons for the very first time, he asked them, "Do you always eat like this?" Do you know what Alex's response was?
What?
You mean with utensils? Yeah. And, it said, now this is funny, kind of in reference to once the show was off the air. Get this, Gar, the entire cast of Family Ties, they wanted to leave the show with the entire Keaton family dying in a plane crash because they had no interest in doing a Family Ties reunion ever.
Yeah, they were really adamant about that. I mean, they were so strong about it. They wanted to kill off the characters.
And what's funny about that is I've read since then the cast here is still regularly in touch, all of them with each other. They really became like a family unit on this show. They do from time to time get together and have reunions. That's why I'm kind of laughing at this. But I think at the time maybe the attitude was not that they hated the show because they become such great friends and they had such great success with the show. But I think like a lot of actors, they didn't want to get typecast. They didn't want to think, oh, this is the only thing we want to be remembered for. But I think at the end of the day, this is what all these people will be remembered for.
Well, typecast was a thing, that kind of started dying in the 70s.
Yeah.
It was very strong in the 60s,
Yeah.
in the 50s, but it started waning in the 70s, and nowadays it typecast. I think there are actors and actresses that are still afraid of being typecast.
Yeah.
But it's not. That is not viewed the way that it was back in the 50s and the 60s. It was. I mean, being typecast in the 50s and the 60s, your career was over.
Yeah.
You couldn't get any more roles.
Yeah, I mean, another guy that comes to mind with that is like Ben Affleck. I mean, he did a movie or two as Batman, and then he kind of was no longer interested in doing that because he's like, I don't want to be just thought as Batman. I mean, you've got so many other great roles. I don't think you have to worry about. But I just don't see like when people do stuff like that. Well, I don't want to be Batman forever, so I'm only going to do 2 movies as Batman. Okay, that's your choice, I guess. But another fun thing I found in doing the research was about Mallory's boyfriend Nick. Apparently, Nick Gar was largely based as a clone of Fonzie from Happy Days. Now, here's the thing with that. Okay, I guess these people, the people behind the show, think, okay, well, Happy Days, they were very successful with the character of Fonzie. So if we have another kind of greaser-looking guy and we just slap on a leather jacket, he's going to automatically transform into the Fonz. And that's not exactly what happened.
Well, then you can also fast forward to the character on Growing Pains.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
That same thing being resuscitated as that formula. I just had to point that out.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
But now I will say though the character of Nick, I think, was successful for a lot of reasons because originally, very much like Fonzie himself, supposed to be a character that appeared in like 1 or 2 episodes. But
he was only supposed to do maybe 1 or 2 episodes.
But he was played by the actor Scott Valentine, and very much like with Michael J. Fox before him, they were saying once Scott Valentine started playing Nick, when they do the live tapings, people just responded to this guy, and that's how he got a reoccurring role and kind of was on the show until the very end. In fact, because of the response the character Nick got, people behind the scenes, they thought, okay, once the show came up, you know what? Let's have a Nick spin-off. And they tried it. They made, from what I understand, 3 different pilots, but were never able to. But I think part of a reason, from what I was reading, it never got off the ground because I don't understand. Like very much like Frasier was a very successful spin-off of Cheers, and it's because he was a character on Cheers, and so we knew him for all these years. And it's Frasier's moved on and from Boston, and it's kind of telling his life now. But the point is, like they want to have Nick move away, from Ohio. He's going to move somewhere to some other state and live with his grandpa. I'm thinking, okay, if him and Mallory all through the time in Family Ties are supposed to be a couple, and they talk how they're going to get married and be together the rest of their life, why would you not have a show based around those 2 characters?
Well, you can only speculate
on
something like that.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? But he felt that he was overpaid. This is what he said.
Yeah. I read that
about his character. He said that he went and studied at all of these prestigious places, learning his craft to become, the best actor he could become, to wind up on a TV show to basically grunt.
Yeah, in fact, what he said specifically about that, he thought he was getting paid way too much just to be a character that basically grunted. In fact, I mean, very much like Fonzie with his I'm going to do this, and you tell me if you think it's good or not, but like this was basically Nick as he walks into every scene. Hey. In fact, there's one episode where we meet Nick's dad, who Nick has been kind of estranged to apparently for years, and as Dad's coming over to Keaton's to meet his son Nick, they open the door and they both are like, hey, and then Stephen Keenan is like telling his wife, hey, they're talking Nickanese. Like they got a language all their own.
That's funny.
Yeah.
Funny.
And then now Gar, for throughout the entire history of Family Ties, one thing that is very obvious about the what they're trying to portray in the show, even with Alex being a young Republican and the hippie parents and their bleeding heart liberals and stuff, it was very surprising that when the actress Meredith Baxter, who plays Elise Keaton, became pregnant in I think it was the second season. And this is interesting. I don't know why shows used to have a problem with this, but they decide, okay, she's gotten pregnant, so we're going to write this into the script, her being pregnant. We're going to make the character of Elise Keaton be pregnant now. They're going to have a fourth child, and that was written into the story. What I don't understand is what was the controversy about showing a pregnant woman on TV? I mean, because even you go back to, we did an earlier episode this year on the history of I Love Lucy, and Lucy became pregnant too on I Love Lucy, but she was allowed to, they just couldn't show her pregnant stomach, but she was still allowed to be on the you see her on the TV. But in Family Ties, for many of the third season episodes, the character of Elise Keaton was kind of written out. We didn't see her on screen. Like, she was apparently upstairs and bedridden because she was pregnant. And in fact, you mentioned Gina Davis guest starring on. They hired the character she played, which was this goofy housekeeper that couldn't keep house, but Alex was just so in love with her, and the girls loved her, but they were trying to cover for her, and don't tell Dad, but she broke the table, she broke all these glasses and everything. We don't want her to get fired. We'll cover for her. And so again, Mom has written out the script, and for a show that's kind of supposed to be about these liberals, I don't understand why they would do that. I mean, even if you look back at Laverne and Shirley, the reason that Cindy Williams left the show is very much the same thing. They were gonna not allow her to be in the episodes while she was pregnant.
It's what you just basically described was the kind of documenting, through the shows,
through the years,
of a social shift.
Yeah.
Because, previous to that, in all years past, you couldn't even say the word pregnant on TV.
Yeah.
You couldn't even say the word pregnant on TV. And so, so we're going from a social shift where it's uncomfortable and all that stuff. If you do that and all that, you can't do it, to a point where now all of a sudden you described an actual social shift.
Yeah, I mean, you even go back to the Flintstones, an animated cartoon, and supposedly it was a big deal at the time that when the show first started, I'm talking about the Flintstones, they had Fred and Wilma sleeping in separate beds, but during the history of the course of the show, by the end of the Flintstones run, Fred and Wilma, from what I understand, were the first married couple on TV to sleep in the same bed on TV, which is kind of funny when we think about it now. But then even you go to I Love Lucy, Lucille Ball being pregnant on TV, and they kind of allowed it, but you still couldn't show a pregnant woman's stomach. I mean, it's kind of funny to look back at those times, because you're like, okay, what would have happened if they would have showed her pregnant stomach on TV? Did women and men?
Well, nothing would have happened. It's just that was the social attitudes at that time.
Yeah, I mean, it's like, did women not get pregnant? I mean, you know what I mean? It's just funny to see that they took something like that so serious.
Yeah, and but I think it's very unique, because most of the time when social shifts happen, they happen kind of stealth-like. They happen, but you don't notice. You know what I mean? Because they social, shifts like that happen incremental.
Oh, sure.
And because it's incremental, it becomes less noticeable. But when you look at it in just chronological, like you just explained, you're looking at a TV show, Lucy, back in the 1950s, where you couldn't show her stomach and you couldn't even say the word pregnant, and there was a bunch of other words that are commonplace nowadays too that you couldn't say back in the 1950s. And then you shift, through the years, and then here you are in the 80s, and they're finally deciding that it's okay to show a pregnant woman on TV.
Yeah,
we're talking about a span of probably about 20 to 30 years that it took for that shift to happen.
Oh, yeah. And Gar, just to wrap up today's episodes, I like to do, talking about what was going on in the world in 1982 when the show premiered. Ronald Reagan was, of course, in the White House. He was the President of the United States. And this is something that I was shocked, because, I don't know, maybe it's my age. I just thought Graceland was around a lot longer, but it said, and also in 1982, Priscilla Presley opens Graceland to the public, but the bathroom where Elvis died 5 years earlier was kept off limits to the public. I mean, just think about that.
He did pass away back in the 70s.
Yeah,
So when you think about it, it's really not that long. I think during the time, between when he died and when it wound up opening, it was, the estate wound up making the decision. Well, I mean, and to me, it's the right decision, because to me, Graceland is a bucket list thing.
Oh yeah, I mean, I guess what surprised me,
passionate tie-in to it or anything like that. It's the passion for music and music history, and I love history.
Oh sure, I mean, I think
and Graceland is a chunk of history that I would like to actually go and visit Graceland.
You and me both, buddy. But I think what surprised me more than that was the fact that Graceland first opened to the public in 1982. I don't know, again, maybe my age, but I thought it was open a little longer than that to the public, but that's kind of interesting to learn. It said August 17th, 1982. Get this. Talking about how far technology has come, the first compact discs are released to the public in Germany, of all places.
Well, also the first cell phone was invented by Motorola.
Wow.
And I remember them back then. They were big and they were white, and they had an antenna that you pulled out like you did on an old AM radio.
Sure. When
you pulled out the antenna like that.
Sure.
Well, that was the first cell phone. It was invented back in the 1980s, and it was invented by Motorola.
Wow. And final fact for the day, October 18th, 1982 is when Sony launched the first consumer compact disc player to be sold in the United States to the public. Wow, how far we have come.
Well, it's also the 80s was the shuttle disaster.
Yeah.
Where the first the school teacher. There's another thing, about things getting lost. In the past. One of the things we know about that happening, but being around, and when it happened, I can give some insight.
We'll get into that one day, Gar.
NASA did a big media blitz about the fact that they were going to do this, and they made a huge media deal about they were taking a school teacher up into space. I think it was the first female to ever go into outer space, and it was a big
deal. I do remember.
Thing. at the time. That is the reason why everyone was at home watching it, because of the big deal that NASA made about it. And I'm not painting NASA in a negative light.
No.
You know, because they had every positive intention, you know, with that.
Yeah.
But it was the element that made it so bad, because everybody was there ready to cheer for a major achievement by our country. That was the whole reason why all of America was at home watching it. School children were at school watching it on TV.
Yeah, Gar, you just took me.
It was a huge deal, and then everybody got to watch that whole thing just go really bad.
Gar, you just took me back in your time machine. I remember exactly what you're talking about, and I just want to thank you for doing this again. Let people know when we come back in 2 weeks to continue with our Michael J. Fox theme. We're going to be talking about his very first movie ever, Back to the Future. That's going to be a lot of fun, Gar. If you could hang on, I want to talk to you a little off there. So thanks, buddy, and take care.
Chaotic Riffs Magazine.